It all started on a quiet Sunday morning at our 150-year-old family HOA, place that's been in our family for generations. My grandpa, who's 87 and tougher than nails, wasn't feeling well, so we called for an ambulance. No sirens, no dramage, just a medical emergency. But little did we know, the real chaos was about to unfold. As the ambulance pulled up to our driveway, the last thing we expected was a confrontation. But then came her. Karen, the self-proclaimed queen of the HOA. She stormed out of her house like a hurricane in yoga pants, screaming about community rules and unauthorized vehicles. We tried to explain this was a real emergency, but she wasn't having it. What happened next left us all speechless. She rammed her car into the ambulance, with my grandpa inside. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The paramedics jumped out trying to protect him, and we were all frozen for a second. Like, is this actually happening? Let me be clear, we're not the kind of people to start trouble. We've lived in this neighborhood longer than most of the houses have stood. But when someone puts our family in danger, especially someone who's supposed to be a neighbor, you better believe we're going to respond. And yes, I work with a tactical team. We're trained, licensed, and legal. This wasn't about revenge. It was about making sure she never hurt anyone again. But here's where it gets really wild. The story didn't end with that crash, not even close. What Karen didn't know was that her actions triggered something bigger, something she couldn't control. What we did next changed the entire neighborhood forever. And let's just say, she picked the wrong family to mess with. Stick around, because the next part is going to blow your mind. Karen wasn't just any neighbor. She was the president of the HOA, self-appointed, of course, and had a reputation for making everyone's life miserable. She complained about lawn lengths, mailbox designs, even the way people parked their cars. But we never imagined she'd take it this far. My family had tried to stay out of her way. We paid our dues, followed the basic rules, and kept to ourselves. But to her, that wasn't enough. She wanted control over everything. And somehow, in her mind, an ambulance in our driveway was a direct attack on her authority. After she hit the ambulance, things escalated fast. Police were called. She was yelling about obstruction of traffic, even though we live on a dead-end road. My grandpa was being wheeled into a backup ambulance while paramedics tried to stay calm. It was chaos, and the worst part? Karen was smiling, like she was proud of what she'd done. That's when I knew this wasn't just about rules, it was about power. And this woman wasn't going to stop unless someone made her. What Karen didn't know was that my team, that team had been staying low-key for years. Most people just saw me as the quiet guy in the corner house. Hey, they didn't know about the work I do. I never flaunted it. But watching her threaten the safety of my family put my grandpa's life at risk. That flipped a switch in me I hadn't touched in a long time. We started digging. Quietly, her HOA role gave her access to a lot more than just monthly meetings, property records, surveillance setups, even gate control logs. And things weren't adding up. There were strange gaps in the paperwork, deleted files, a pattern of complaints that all targeted long-time residents, especially anyone she couldn't push around. That's when we realized this wasn't just a neighborhood drama. There was something much deeper going on. And Karen, she was at the center of it. We were about to uncover a web of control and manipulation that reached way beyond one ambulance or one angry neighbor. But we had to be smart. Because whatever game she was playing, she played it dirty. The deeper we looked into Karen's background, the stranger things got. She hadn't even lived in the neighborhood that long, just under 3 years, but somehow had worked her way into a position of total control. She'd rewritten HOA rules without proper votes, silenced opposition, and even manipulated security camera placements so only certain homes were monitored. My neighbor Tony, a retired firefighter, had told me months ago he got fined for putting up an American flag too early in the season. At the time, I thought it was just Karen being petty. Now, it felt like something more. Meanwhile, my grandpa was recovering slowly in the hospital. The doctors said the stress from the incident had worsened his heart condition. That shook me. This wasn't just about neighborhood politics anymore, had become personal. My mom wanted to press charges immediately, but the local police, well, they seemed hesitant. One officer even suggested we just let the HOA handle it internally. That's when it hit me. Karen had connections. Somehow, she was pulling strings behind the scenes. And if local authorities weren't willing to act, we'd have to go another route. My team started splitting up tasks. One of us traced the HOA's financials, another looked into recent property foreclosures in the area. There were more than expected. And they all had one thing in common. Each homeowner had received multiple outrageous fines from Karen's committee just months before. Being forced out. And then there was the tech angle. A friend of mine, a cybersecurity analyst, flagged something unusual: encrypted files being sent from Karen's home network to an external server in another state. We couldn't tell what was inside yet, but it wasn't your average HOA data. All the while, Karen acted like nothing happened. She hosted a block party that weekend, smiling like she hadn't rammed a medical vehicle days earlier. She handed out flyers about new security upgrades and surveillance improvements. But to us, it felt more like she was tightening her grip. Whatever she was hiding, she knew we were getting close. And we knew we had to be careful, because the more we uncovered, the more dangerous things were starting to feel. By the end of that week, everything felt different. The neighborhood had a strange chill to it, like people were watching us soar, avoiding us entirely. Karen had clearly started spreading her version of the story. Some neighbors who used to wave at us suddenly wouldn't make eye contact. Others seemed nervous, like they knew something, but were too scared to say it. It was clear Karen had her grip on more than just the HOA. She had influence. Fear, we were close to something big. My teammate Marcus had cracked part of the encrypted data Karen was sending. It wasn't just HOA reports, it was surveillance footage. Hours and hours of private video feeds from security cameras that weren't supposed to be connected to anything outside the neighborhood. These weren't public areas either. They were backyards, driveways, inside garages. She'd been spying on people, recording without consent, probably for months, maybe years. But that wasn't the worst part. One of the files had our address tagged. It was footage of our home, our front porch, our side yard, even my grandpa sitting outside reading his newspaper. We hadn't signed up for any neighborhood security system, which meant someone planted those cameras on our property without permission. That changed everything. We realized we couldn't wait much longer. We needed to confront this before Karen could bury the truth or retaliate. But we had to be smart. She'd already shown she was capable of acting recklessly and without remorse. If she'd ram an ambulance to make a point, who knew what else she was willing to do to protect her secrets. The plan was simple, but risky. We'd pull all the evidence together: videos, files, financial records, and show up at the next HOA meeting, not to argue, to expose. It was scheduled for Friday night, held in the neighborhood clubhouse that Karen insisted on locking during all meetings. Only board members and approved residents were allowed in. But we weren't asking any more. We were done playing by her rules. What we didn't know was that Karen had already figured out we were coming, and what she had waiting for us inside that clubhouse. None of us were ready for it. We got to the clubhouse just after sunset. The parking lot was almost empty, except for Karen's silver SUV and a few cars that belonged to her usual inner circle. We'd planned it carefully. Marcus had a flash drive with all the files. Tony was bringing printed records, and I had a copy of the HOA bylaws showing all the rules she'd broken. We thought we were ready for anything, but the moment we stepped inside, we knew something was off. The lights were low, the room eerily quiet. No meeting chairs set up, no refreshments like usual. Just Karen standing near the front, arms crossed, smile tight. Behind her, a projector screen was already glowing. And then she hit play. What came up wasn't her defense, it was us. Footage of me walking into my own backyard. Clips of Marcus talking to my cybersecurity friend in front of his house. Even a shot of Tony taking papers from his mailbox. It was all out of context, chopped and edited to look like we were the ones spying, plotting, breaking into private systems. Karen looked right at us and said, "You're not the only ones collecting evidence." My heart dropped. She'd somehow flipped the narrative. And worse, she'd anticipated our every move. This wasn't just a power-hungry HOA leader anymore. Karen was orchestrating a full-on smear campaign, and she'd planted her trap perfectly. If this got out, we'd be the ones on defense. Our reputations, our jobs, even our families could be dragged into it. Then she made her biggest move yet. She pulled out a document and handed it to me with that same smug look. It was a cease and desist letter, signed, stamped, and ready to file. Claimed we were harassing a public official and compromising neighborhood safety. If we went public with our evidence, she